7 months on from Japan's nuclear meltdown, thousands of people are still unable to return to their homes around the Fukushima nuclear power plant. And for many of them, the terrible realisation is sinking in that they may never go back. Some communities have been found to be radiation hotspots, with levels comparable to those found at Chernobyl. Many of those affected say they've had little help from the Japanese government as they struggle to come to terms with what's happened. The ABC's North Asia correspondent Mark Willesee travelled to one of the Fukushima hotspots and talked to some of those dealing with the ongoing legacy of this disaster.
He's a practitioner of Zen, a seeker of enlightenment in an age of nuclear fallout. Koyu Abe is the chief monk of Fukushima's 400-year-old Joenji temple. And this is a sutra for peace and rebirth, a prayer for the resurrection of an entire community choked in radiation.
This radiation is like an invisible snow. It's fallen and brought us a long winter. But eventually the snow will melt and spring will come.
To help his community rid itself of this invisible snow, Monk Abe is allowing people to dump their radioactive topsoil on temple land. Armed with his 4 Geiger counters, he shows me just how contaminated this earth is. The Japanese-made Geiger counter quickly blasts off the scale. The others reveal radiation levels 10 times beyond what's considered safe.
The radiation level here is so high that some of the Geiger counters can't measure it. But I still accept this contaminated soil.
But to get a real sense of just how contaminated some of these areas are, I have to travel closer to the shattered nuclear plant, to a community abandoned to the ravages of radiation. Well, I'm just crossing the mountains into Iitate and our Geiger counter is spiking. It's quadrupled just in the space of a minute or two in terms of its reading. So there is no doubt this place is a radiation hotspot, especially since they found radioactive plutonium there just a couple of weeks ago. I've come to meet Kenichi Hasegawa, and as I pull into his farm in Iitate, the Geiger counter reading begins to rise. Before the nuclear meltdowns, Mr. Hasegawa was a dairy farmer. Now his sheds are empty, his cattle slaughtered or sold off, his property is deserted and increasingly derelict. Ask him about the performance of his government during this crisis, and Kenichi Hasegawa goes close to meltdown himself.
I have absolutely no trust in the government. I thought they could deal with a nuclear accident, but it is a joke. So now all they do is cover up and hide data. All the while we're exposed to more and more radiation. What the hell are they doing?
There's no doubt Kenichi Hasegawa's farm is in a hot zone. A screeching Geiger counter attests to that. The nuclear fallout has scattered Mr. Hasegawa's family. His son will no longer inherit the farm. But what reduces this stoic farmer to tears is the tragic story of a close friend, also a dairy farmer, who took his own life when told to slaughter his animals and leave his land.
When I heard the news, I went to his home and he was already in a coffin, but I still couldn't believe it. I opened the coffin and then I saw him. I choked up. Before the nuclear disaster, he'd been so happy.
The Fukushima meltdowns have displaced 80,000 people. Many of them, like Tomoe Unuma and her daughter Hana, are still living in shelters scattered throughout Japan. Tomoe Unuma has been allowed to return to her home once to collect some belongings. Less than 3 kilometres from the oozing remains of the nuclear plant, the village of Futaba is now an overgrown, decaying ruin.
When we entered the zone, it hit me just what a terrible mess it had become. Normally it's a beautiful place of rice fields and homes, but it was choked with weeds. I can't forget that scene.
For 10-year-old Hana Unama, life now means separation from her friends and her father, who was forced to find work in another part of the country.
I think about home sometimes, but I know I can't go back, and it makes me sad.
Across Fukushima, there are countless more stories like those of the monk Koyo Abe, the farmer Kenichi Hasegawa, and the evacuee Tomoe Unuma. Stories of resilience, loss, and hope.
Monks like me must ease people's suffering. If there's something I can do, I need to take action.
They say God never gives you a challenge you can't overcome, but I don't know if I'm strong enough to overcome this.
We might come back, but I won't let the children come back. It will never be safe for them, but I'd like to return and have my bones buried here.
The invisible snow of radiation continues to haunt Fukushima. And for thousands here, it could stalk them all their lives. Mark Willesee, Late Line.